Hey guys, it's Darren. Welcome back to the Touch MBA podcast. You know, one of the best parts of hosting this show is that I get to learn alongside you as well. And I love featuring, top-ranked world-class business schools in countries that might not be as well-known outside of their country. And I believe this is one of those programs, and that's the Melbourne Business School MBA or the Melbourne MBA. Top-ranked program based in Melbourne, one of the most livable cities in the world. I've never been, but I can't wait to visit and see what the city is all about and what the business school is all about. But I learned a lot more about this program and, what you could look forward to and how you can improve your chances to get into the Melbourne MBA from this week's guest, Anastasia, who is the Director of Admissions for Melbourne Business School. Anastasia has been working in higher education admissions for many years. And so I really enjoyed having this chat with her. And I hope those of you considering Australia and Melbourne Business School will find this podcast packed full of useful information. And at Touch MBA, what we're trying to do is help you shortlist schools that would be the best investment for you, that would be the best fit. And so if you need help with that, we have a number of free guides available at touchmba.com/guides. For example, comparing the top MBA programs in Australia head to head. You can get our free guide to that, as well as a personal service. You can submit your CV and resume, and we'd be happy to give you some tips on how you can improve your profile and, guide you towards best fit business schools. You could also share your profile there for pre-assessments from a number of top business schools around the world. So go check that out go check us out at touchmba.com. And now on to my conversation with Anastasia. I'm really excited to interview our next guest and learn more about her MBA program. She's the Director of Admissions for Melbourne Business School based in Melbourne, Australia. Anastasia Georgiou, I hope I got your last name right. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Darren. Thank you. It's depending on your accent. If you're Australian, it's Georgiou. But
Georgiou.
You're
okay.
absolutely right. It is meant to be Georgiou.
So Georgiou.
Yes.
Okay. So now everyone who listens to this podcast will say your last name correctly. We'll get that one wrong. But yeah, thanks again, Anastasia, for coming on the show. And actually, before we get into the program, could you first just tell us what you do at Melbourne Business School?
Okay, sure. So as the Director of Admissions at Melbourne Business School, my role covers two main areas, the first one being student recruitment. And so we work really closely with our marketing department on student recruitment activities. And then the second part is the operations of admissions. And the portfolio covers all admissions into the school. So whether it's an MBA or one of our executive education programs, the admissions department cover all of those.
Wow. And I know you have a long history in higher education. You're previously at Monash University, correct? Yes.
Yeah, so I've been in higher education for nearly 20 years now, so quite a long time, and the most of that time has actually been in the admissions space.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so we're so lucky to have you. And the first question I want to ask is, what makes the Melbourne Business School MBA unique from not just the other top business schools in Australia, but the world?
Well, we manage individual student needs through a high-touch service, and we aim for a smaller cohort. So we have dedicated staff, not just in the admissions portfolio, but in our other portfolios. So we have a program director and dedicated professional staff to our different versions of the MBA. The small class size also has two benefits. So first, it means that as a student, you get a better experience. And the fact that we have small classes also means that we attract academics from the big name schools around the world. So, for example, we've got faculty who have come from Columbia, Yale, Harvard, London Business School, and NCAD. And they all come here to teach at a school where, by working with smaller classes, they can get to know the students better and have a much greater impact on their lives. And the other thing that we do is we provide networking opportunities and engagement with industry partners through our connections with business.
Yeah, and what is the class size?
So we look for anything between probably around a 40 student mark. Obviously, we receive quite a large volume of applications for the program, but we try to keep the numbers quite small and intimate.
And I know Melbourne Business School has this deep history and connection with top Australian companies. Could you tell us more about that?
Yes, so Melbourne Business School was actually founded by a group of businessmen who wanted to put a business school together. So it was founded in 1963. It's actually the first Australian university to confer an MBA. So not university, sorry, first Australian school to offer an Australian MBA. So the school is actually owned majority by business, so leaders in the business community, and that's a 55% ownership. And then the balance is owned 45% by the university. So it's the leaders in business that actually govern us as a board of directors. And so it's through them and through our founding board that the business school has come to fruition. And so we work still very closely with businesses, and they, like I said, as the board of directors, they have very strong opinions on how the school should be run. And so we try not to operate like a standard business school, but more like a school for business.
Yeah, I mean, I find that really interesting. So when you're reporting to this board comprised of businesses, like, could you give me an example of what is a strong feedback they would give, for example?
Strategic direction of the school, for example. It could be anything with regards to our leadership, where the direction of the leadership, but it's really more about strategic direction. And so every area within the school, obviously, annually comes up with a strategic plan and the execution of that plan, and that's something that the board of directors has oversight of. And if there's an area that they think could use improvement, then they pass that back through.
Wow. Yeah, that's really unique. And then so academically and reputation-wise, where do you think Melbourne Business School really stands out?
Well, we are the highest ranked Australian MBA by a number of rankings. Yeah, so QS, The Economist, and Financial Times do rank our MBA as the highest in Australia. And the University of Melbourne is also the highest ranked university in Australia. So as far as reputation goes, that kind of speaks for itself. You know, we're a cohort-driven university. We're a cohort-driven school. So it's what the cohort need that drives our decision-making. We also have really great career support.
Yeah.
Now, I was just going to say, we've got really great career support, but I can tell you about that group a little bit later.
Okay. And I think the last time I had Melbourne Business School on the show was a number of years ago. And back then, I remember, I think his name was Ed, telling me that marketing and finance were really strong, sort of departments in the business school. Is that similar today, would you say?
Yes, so we do actually also offer the MBA and a Master of Marketing as a dual degree, so they are very closely aligned. We've done a lot of work and have a new centre in sustainability, and also business analytics is another centre that we have. So we're moving also towards those areas. And
so, yeah, because I noticed that students have the option, right, to complete the program in 12 or 24 months. And I'm wondering, could you explain how that works and what the majority of your students end up pursuing?
Okay, so that's actually a recent development. We did offer a one-year MBA, and we got a lot of feedback from the students that were doing that, but as much as they loved it, and they did by the time they got through to the end, they did find that there were times that it was just too much. It was too intense and there was too much work to get through in a really short period of time. And so the school did a bit of work to work out exactly what would be a better alternative for these students and at what kind of pace. And so the content was also reviewed. And so what we've come up with is essentially a 2-year MBA in which students can complete the majority of the work early and return to the workforce. And then there's a capstone at the end as well. But yeah, so it's been designed and changed in a way that allows much more flexibility. So by extending the duration of the program, and we haven't changed the fees in any way, and we haven't added content, but what we've done is we've allowed more flexibility in attending things like internships or going on exchange or even taking up electives that may not have been available in the one term that, or the 2 terms that the full-time students were initially limited to. So what we've really done is looked at flexibility of how can we allow students to change their study in a way that gives them much more flexibility. And so if they choose to do the faster option and do all the core subjects and then do all the electives in a condensed mode, then they're free to pretty much go back into the workforce and do what they need to do until the small capstone unit at the end. Otherwise, they can pace themselves just like a normal full-time student would and enjoy the opportunities of, our personal effectiveness program, our workplace readiness, business seminars that we run. And like I said earlier, elective options are open up more, exchange opportunities and internships as well.
Oh, and I really want to dive into the personal effectiveness part of the curriculum, but one more question there. So does this mean, for example, someone could pursue the full-time MBA at Melbourne, finish the core courses, within that first 12-month time frame, and then start working and then take electives for the next year? Does that? Yeah,
look, it really depends on the work rights of the individual student. But that is something that's definitely possible, that students can do that. We find that most students that haven't been to Australia before or haven't studied in Australia before prefer the longer duration, and the reason is because the elective subjects are held in the evening, so it gives them lots of opportunity to enjoy the culture within Australia during the day.
Yes. Well, and maybe we could talk about that culture. I've never been to Melbourne, and I see. On you. Yeah, shame on me, right? I've never been to Australia, so shame on me double. But I see these rankings that it's one of the most livable cities in the world, and could you just tell me more about why Melbourne would be such a great place to get an MBA from a top business school?
Yeah, well, I mean, you mentioned it yourself. So Melbourne was the world's most livable city for 18 years straight. That's a massive accomplishment for any city to do, but, we managed it. We're the multicultural capital of Australia. So we have residents from over 140 different countries speaking more than 200 languages. We're also the sporting capital of Australia. So, for example, we hold the Australian Open here, so the tennis. We have soccer, basketball, swimming, cycling, football, depending on your version, whether it be Australian rules football, rugby football, or like I mentioned, soccer. There's netball, there's hockey, there's volleyball, including beach volleyball, there's golf. It just goes on, and I'm not talking about your local domestic competition. We're talking national and international competitions. So sporting capital, cafes. There's a cafe almost on every corner of every suburb. It's just a great place to live. The temperature here is quite constant, so it doesn't get incredibly hot and it doesn't get incredibly cold. It's just a great place to live. I've lived here myself for probably about 25 years now, and I just love it. And I've visited many other cities around the world, but I just find Melbourne a great place to live. so easy to get around. And, I'm bringing up my family here.
And, again, for someone who has never been to Australia, what is kind of Melbourne's reputation, business-wise, in the country?
Well, I think it's the place to do business, to be perfectly honest. We have some of the biggest organisations within Australia having their head office here in Melbourne. So we have connections, really close connections, obviously, with other countries in the Asia-Pacific region, including New Zealand. But, yeah, Melbourne is certainly the place to conduct business, especially if you're looking for, some sort of diversity in either your staff, because like I said, we've got people from all over the world living here, or if you're looking for diversity in your clientele. Melbourne's great. There's startups, there's multinational corporations here, there's every type of business you can imagine being run out of Melbourne.
And yeah, to circle back to the personal effectiveness part of the curriculum, could you tell us more about what that entails and why that's such an important part of the program?
Yeah, so we've got this group called Career Management Centre, and what they do, apart from being so passionate about careers and supporting people's careers, is they run what we call the Personal Effectiveness Program, so PEP in short. So what they do is they assist our students and they provide one-on-one career coaching as well from before you even step foot through our front door. They provide integrated personal skill development from not just academic studies, but also leadership development and career transition, and like I mentioned, coaching. And they have a focus on applied learning techniques with multiple practice opportunities, because if you can't apply it, then, how good are you? And they create personal toolkits so that each person has their own toolkit in first impressions, in interviewing, in networking, presentations. So they spend a lot of time with our students, so sometimes once a week, depending on which program you're in. And each full-time student also gets, like I said, their own career coach, and they meet one-on-one with that career coach, again, I believe on a weekly basis to provide that support. They're such a dedicated team. They are also the highest ranked career management centre in Australia as well.
And yeah, how big is that team?
So there's 5 people in the team, and the team is headed by one of my colleagues called John Gursky. John's the director of the Career Management Centre. He's actually originally from the US as well, and used to work as a recruiter for MBA students into organisations. And, with that knowledge and with that background, John and his team have got great relationships with organisations like AB InBev, Microsoft, L'Oreal, Johnson & Johnson, Deloitte, McKinsey, Accenture. I could just go on and on. They've got the networks, they've got the connections, and they are incredibly passionate about what they do.
Yeah, well, I can't wait to dive more into that during the career section of our talk. If we could discuss admissions, because I'm sure now, we have listeners, okay, like, how do I get into this program? What are the fit qualities you're looking for, given everything you've told us about, having this smaller, high-touch program?
Yeah. Look, the first thing I'm going to tell you is that we do not have a one-size-fits-all approach. So I can't tell you that if you tick boxes A, B, and C, that you're in, because that's certainly not how we approach admissions. So we have a holistic approach. We look at all parts of an applicant. So we look at their academic background. We look at their personal statements. We look at the referee statements. We look at a GMAT obviously as well, but not one thing is the indicator as to whether or not you'll be accepted into our MBA.
But are there like certain qualities, right, that would make someone a great cultural fit with your program?
Yeah, so it's really about leadership potential. That's the thing that we're looking for. Someone that demonstrates leadership potential. So yeah, it really is that leadership skills. It's about their experience as well. You know, what's their background like? What have they done that's different and unique and unusual? And what can they bring to the classroom as well? So, you know, if we're admitting the brightest students from around the world, which we are, then we want them to be able to contribute to the conversation and not be left out.
Mm. And I mean, through your many years in admissions, you know, what makes someone really jump off the page to scream like, yeah, I have leadership potential? You know, what gets you really excited to meet an applicant?
There's a couple of things. One is where someone has been able to demonstrate their ambition, that they're ambitious, but realistic ambitions. So, you know, we have applicants with 2 years of professional experience saying that by the time they finish their MBA, they want to be a CEO or a CFO or a partner in one of the largest consulting companies across the world. Now, we can't do that. No one can do that. So we love that people have ambition, but they need to be realistic in those ambitions. And they need to be able to demonstrate that desire to succeed. They also need to have, you know, the diversity that I was talking about. You know, we're looking for people with diverse and unusual backgrounds. So if they have, for example, you know, a unique background geographically, or their career has taken them somewhere that's a little bit different or unusual to the rest of the cohort, they're the people that we want to meet and we want to hear about, you know, or how did you make the decision to move, you know, from this country to that country, or take that position that's completely out of your depth that, you know, was going to push you to the absolute limits. Those are the types of people that we want to hear from and you know, and really get excited about meeting them.
Yeah, and how closely tied are someone's career goals to this sort of ambition and drive you're looking for? Like, how clear of a picture do they have to present on that end?
Look, there needs to be an alignment more so of their goals and their aspirations and their capabilities and strengths. Some people just know that they want to do an MBA but don't have a clear direction as to where they want it to take them. Others come in saying that they want to go into consulting and end up in a startup. So it's not necessarily about having a particular ambition or goal, but it's about aligning those with what an MBA can provide you and what are each person's individual capabilities and strengths. And they don't all have to be the same. You know, and again, I keep saying the word diversity. It's about what's different, but it's the alignment that is really key for us.
Yeah, I love that word, alignment, because I've done, you know, a number of these interviews. I've never heard that, actually. That's the first time I've heard that word, alignment, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And for your interviews, I noticed your interviews last, 20 to 30 minutes? Who are they conducted by?
Actually, our Career Management Centre conduct the interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so they're looking at, you know, what are the intentions of candidates. So we need to make sure that if we are going to admit someone, that their intentions are aligned with what we can offer. We do get candidates that are just interested. So we get candidates that have already got an MBA, for example, and want to come to Melbourne Business School. They're not people that we would admit to the program. So we need to make sure that their intentions align with what we are able to deliver.
Mm. Yeah, so should applicants expect any sort of questions or a certain sort of format during that interview?
Oh, it really is conducted like a standard interview, you know, almost like a job interview. You know, like I said, it is the Careers Management Centre that conduct them, but they're so passionate they want everyone to succeed. You know, that they're just such a wonderful group to work with. But, you know, if there are red flags or concerns that the Career Management Centre identify, then they certainly let me know and the rest of the selection committee know.
Got it. And yeah, and then I have to ask about the GMAT, because I did notice your average is quite high. How important, or I should say, do you have a minimum there that you're expecting if your average is around 700, right?
Yeah. So we don't have a minimum, and I'll tell you why. We've historically admitted students with crazy GMATs, 740, who haven't been good fits for the program. So, they didn't have the social skills that's required to be successful, not just in an MBA, but to move on into a career that we could support them with. And then we've had other people with quite low GMAT, so for example in the low 600s, that have been amazing in the classroom and really thrived within the MBA. So as far as a minimum goes, we try not to set a minimum. And, I was actually speaking with the team earlier today, and they said, what if someone has a GMAT of this score? Do we just send them through to no offer? And I said, absolutely not. I need you to look at their CVs. I need you to look at their transcripts. I need you to look at their referee statements. I need you to read their personal statements, because if there's something in there where we think they've got the potential to be successful in an MBA, that's what we're looking for. The GMAT is a score. It's a great way of identifying potential, but it's not the only way, and there's a whole heap of other things that we need to consider as well.
And do you prefer the GMAT over the GRE? As a test, as a standardized test?
We've only just started accepting. Yeah, we've only just started accepting GRE, so we don't have enough information for ourselves. We don't have enough data to see what the success is like for those students once they come in through the program. So I am aware that other universities have a cap on how many GRE students they'll accept or a percentage. We're not at that point yet. So GRE is still very new for us. So at this point in time, yes, GMAT is preferred, but it doesn't mean anyone will be disadvantaged if they use the GRE for admission. I can tell you about the GMAT, though. We have just recently waived the GMAT for applicants that have done a bachelor's degree in Australia or New Zealand.
Wow.
So that means that they will not need the GMAT score for admission into the degree. However, it will impact their scholarship eligibility.
Right. So in other words, if they want scholarships, they should definitely take the GMAT. I mean, just to be
absolutely
clear. Right? Okay. Yeah, I just want
to be absolutely clear. That's exactly right.
Highlight that 3 times. Wow, that's really interesting. Any bachelor's degree from Australia, they don't have to take the GMAT. So
Australia or New Zealand,
they
do not have to take the GMAT.
Wow. So one other question I wanted to ask you here on the admission side is, given that you have this really intense 12-month program, you're really looking for contribution in the classroom, right? Leadership, aspirations, and potential and so forth. What would you advise applicants who are either at that lower end or higher end of work experience, right? So maybe someone, your minimum requirement is 2 years, is that right? 2 years of work experience?
Yes.
So maybe
2 years
someone
of professional work experience.
Yeah. So maybe someone with those 2 years, or someone who's above with, say, 10 years of work experience. Do you expect anything sort of different from the way they present their case?
Yeah, absolutely. So someone with 10 years of experience, we would expect that they would have more opportunity to have demonstrated career progression and contribution back to the organisation. Someone with 2 years of experience hasn't yet had that opportunity, but we would be looking at other ways that they would have contributed back to wherever they've been. So, a lot of applicants that have 2 years of professional work experience have been able to demonstrate that in other ways, like some volunteer work or sporting organisations or other organisations that they're with. None of these are requirements, by the way. It's just things that people are telling us about so that they can stand out versus the next applicant.
And do you have any last tips for applicants, on how they could improve their chances of admissions?
Yeah, so we spoke about the alignment before, so being able to demonstrate that alignment between the goals, their aspirations and what their current capabilities and strengths are, and that should come out in the personal statements. Presenting the best possible version of themselves. So, don't rush through things. whether it's addressing those personal statements, whether it's preparing for the GMAT. So, data shows us that the longer time you spend on GMAT, the higher score you're going to get. I mean, it makes sense. And be authentic.
Could you, dive a little deeper into what you mean by that? Be authentic.
Be authentic. So don't try to present yourself as to who you think we want in the classroom or who you think we might be looking for. Present yourself for who you are, because you are who we are looking for. Like I said before, we don't have a one-size-fits-all. We don't have check boxes that we expect people to be able to identify against. So if you are yourself and you're presenting the best version of yourself, that's what is going to get you across the line. That's what we're interested in.
Fantastic. And then for scholarships, what is your kind of philosophy towards scholarships? And what do applicants need to know here about improving their chances of getting one?
Yeah, so our goal with scholarships is to attract the top students from diverse backgrounds. So I mentioned before, whether it's geographically, academically, career, whatever, it's that diversity in the classroom that we're looking for. So there's no real right or wrong, again, and we have different scholarships. We've got full tuition scholarships that are donor funded, and then we've got partial tuition scholarships, and then we've got scholarships that are funded by the school as well. So the options vary, and they're great. Some scholarships, in particular the donor-funded scholarships, have extra requirements, and all of those are on our website. And people can look at those and see what the requirements are for each individual scholarship, and the closing dates of those vary as well. And some of them go back to the donor for final selection. So they all vary. So, for us, it's about supporting the cost of studying for students that show, like I said before, that leadership potential. Not everyone can afford to do an MBA, but it doesn't mean they're not capable of doing an MBA. So where we can assist and support those students, that's what we're looking for.
And, could you give us an idea of roughly, how many students win some sort of scholarship funding?
Oh, look, it really varies from year to year. It's hard to say, actually, because the donor-funded scholarships, some of them go to our full-time students and some of them go to our part-time students. And it also depends on which version of the MBA that we're talking about. So, like I said, we have 4 different MBA versions. So we've got a part-time, which is predominantly for domestic students that study in the evening and work full-time during the day. We've got our full-time MBA, which is exactly that. It's a full-time study load. And then we have 2 executive MBAs as well. And so the scholarship money goes predominantly to the full-time students, because unlike the other cohorts, the full-time students are usually unable to have also jobs. So we try to support them wherever we can in that space.
Got it. And then moving on to career opportunities coming out of Melbourne Business School. Does your program offer internships in that 12 months? Well, I guess now they have the option, right?
Well, the option was there before when it was just a 12-month degree, but the options were quite limited because there was a small time frame from when the students finished their core subjects to when they could select their electives or their internship and exchange. Whereas now that we've made it into a 2-year MBA, there's a lot more opportunities. They can choose to do an elective in this term and then go on an exchange opportunity or what have you next term. So the options, the flexibility is the thing that is there now. So, and the other thing is that it's our career management centre that coordinate all of the internships because they're the ones with the connections to business. Right.
So, speaking of that, what do you think makes, clearly I've heard you mention the career team, this is really an outstanding group. But what else would you say
Yeah,
makes
I've got a work crush on them.
Hey,
they're an amazing group. I can't speak highly enough of them.
Like, that is such a reassuring thing to hear as an applicant, because I mean, we all know this being from the industry, that no matter how great your MBA program is, students always complain about their career services. like it's just, I don't know. I feel like that's very common, but to hear, that you have so much confidence and yeah, a work crush on the career services team, I'm sure that's actually like wonderful to hear as an applicant,
Yeah, I'm just imagining John's face when he hears this. He's like,
yeah. Be sure to send this podcast to him. But
I'm going to send it to everyone I know.
What else do you think makes the Melbourne Business School, like MBA, special from that career perspective, right?
So it's stuff that we've touched on before. So, it's what the Career Management Centre do. They provide so much support to our students. So they build those personal skills, they help them create professional networks, and they elevate those career options. The Personal Effectiveness Program we spoke about earlier, things like presentation, networking, structured thinking, resilience, how to negotiate job offers. I wish 30 years ago that someone had helped me with that kind of stuff. And the career coaching and that connectedness with business, they're just, I don't know, like no one, I've not seen any of them complain or whinge about what they do and the students they work with. They just find it so incredibly rewarding. And, and that makes me really comfortable when I admit a student into the MBA. I'm really confident that they're going to get the full support they need, not just from our Career Management Centre, but every other division within the Melbourne Business School. They will get full support and they will be treated like individuals. We don't look up students. If you contact us as a current student and say, hey, I've got an issue, you will never hear anyone say, what is your student ID number? It will be, what is your name? So, it gets to the point where our Career Management Centre, when we're on campus and a full-time students come past, I know them, I know their name, I usually know their partner's name. The Career Management Centre will tell you when their birthday is, which suburb they live in, what job they're interested in, what interviews they've attended. They will tell you everything about them.
Wow.
Well, within privacy, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And what can you tell our audience about the alumni network of the school and how they are connected to the program, how students are connected to them?
Yeah, so we've got a really big alumni network. So we've got about 8,500 MBA alum and about 18,000 school alum. They are literally now placed all over the globe. Obviously in the Asia Pacific area, but we've got people in the Americas, we've got people in Europe, we've got people literally all over the world, and there are chapters as well. So we have a department, Alumni Relations Department, headed up by the lovely Louise, and we have chapters, and so each chapter arranges activities and events and networking opportunities. But the thing about this alum network, if you're admitted into one of our MBAs and you reach out to someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'm doing an MBA at MBS, 9 times out of 10, they will respond and they will reply. And they'll say, hey, that's fantastic. This is such an amazing group. We have regular events also in Melbourne, so there's an alumni reunion that our alumni relations team organise annually as well, and so many people come and it's like, oh, you finished a year after me. Here's my business card. I'd love to connect. We know that most work opportunities come up through networks, and so our target, I guess, is to keep these people connected, not just with each other, but with future alumnus.
No, absolutely. And I imagine that most of your non-Australian international cohort that's flying in, that's coming in to MBS, that they want to work in Australia after their MBA. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about how the visa process works.
Yeah, so a lot of students are selecting the MBA at MBS so that they can then stay and work within Australia. So the visa, first of all, if you are a non-Australian resident or citizen, then an international person will need to obtain an international student visa. The time that it takes to obtain that visa can be anything from a few weeks to a few months, so we recommend that you submit your applications as early as possible so that if you're successful, you can start that process. At the end of your studies, depending on your individual eligibilities, students can then apply for a work visa. So that then allows them, I think, 2 years of study or of work in Australia. The other option is being sponsored, so an organisation can sponsor someone to work in Australia as well. So there are lots of options, but there's so many different scenarios that the best thing to do is seek advice from a licensed agent. So we can't do that. We don't have the in-depth knowledge that's required to be able to provide that advice. But licensed agents, it's their bread and butter. They should be able to help.
Mm. Yeah, and one last question with careers is, like, I'm wondering if you've heard back from any alumni or even students who have recently graduated about, how the MBS MBA has really helped them in their careers.
Oh, yeah. We're constantly getting that feedback, and it's lovely, to be honest. We actually get it from people while they're still in their MBA, in particular domestic students. But for the full-time students that come in, they're constantly keeping in touch with us. Again, that's part of what careers do. It doesn't end, the opportunity in the service that careers provide doesn't end when you graduate. It goes beyond. You can develop great relationships with those guys, and they'll support you wherever they can. And that goes for faculty as well. Some of our faculty are there to help and support if you're in the workplace and you have a challenging issue. Then they're okay with you reaching out and saying, "Hey, Professor X." But they're all telling us, and they're all connecting back to us and telling us what great opportunities they've come across and where where they've ended up. Some people come to Australia to stay in Australia and end up in a different country that they would never have considered previously, in a role that they would never have considered. And that's the real satisfying part of the role. Where did they start? And what were their intentions? And then where did they end up? And and seeing the smiles on their faces when they graduate, that's really rewarding.
Yeah, and I have to ask you this question as well. What's happening with COVID-19, and how is that affecting your intake and what's happening at the school?
So with all of our programs, with the exception of the full-time MBA intake, all of our programs went to online learning, and that happened probably in about a 2-week turnaround time, which was amazing how fast we were able to do that, and so efficiently as well. We're lucky we've got our own digital team who work with our executive education space, so they provided a lot of support to help us develop those skills. So all of the current students went to an online version. The students that were with us that recently graduated in the full-time MBA, they were in the elective stage, and so they also went to the evening programs. We had a full-time MBA that was meant to have started this week, but we cancelled that program pretty much as soon as Australia went into lockdown. We realised at the time that COVID was not going to go away. We realised that travel was going to be incredibly limited, and we realised that the government would not issue student visas. And so one of the options that we considered was online. Do we start the program online and see where we end up? And the decision not to go online was pretty much because we are looking for not intensive so much anymore, but a small, close-knit network. And you know as well as I do, when you're on a Zoom call all day, every day, you can't think, you can't function. It's just not an ideal learning environment. And so it was a difficult decision to make, but the decision was to cancel that intake. So we're now preparing and planning for next year, for our students to start this time next year. And we are very hopeful that these restrictions that is currently faced in various areas around the world will be eased to the point where we'll be able to admit students back into the program. We'll be able to, we can admit them now. The Australian government is starting to issue international student visas, so people can start on those visas as soon as possible as well. So we're quite confident that the program will go ahead next year.
I'm sure a number of our listeners' ears perked up and they're probably thinking, well, does that mean there will be less seats next year because, maybe you deferred a number of incoming students till next year?
We did defer a handful of students. A lot of the students that were based already in Australia converted to our part-time program. So they started already, and there were a number of people that we had already made offers to commence this year, and we've honoured those offers. And we will actually be going out to those people in the next week or so and just asking if they're still interested so that we know what our numbers are like. So there are some people, absolutely, that are already in the program, but our first round of applications has also closed, so we would have been probably in the same spot regardless.
Okay. Yep. It's crystal clear. And then this has been a really great talk. I feel like I've learned a lot more about the program. I just want to ask one final question. Is there anything you just wish more people knew, more candidates knew about the Melbourne MBA?
The first thing that comes to mind that surprises a lot of people is that we don't charge an application fee. We just don't believe that people should be charged to apply for an opportunity like this. So we don't charge an application fee for admissions. And then just, the experiential nature of the program. So it's not just, an MBA on paper. It's opportunities to apply that knowledge throughout the program. It's not just a purely academic program. We're not looking for large volumes. We're not competing with the biggest schools in the world. Yes, we've got high rankings, but that's as a result of what we do. It's not our target. So, I just want people to know that we're interested. We want to hear from you. And let's see if we're the right fit for one another.
It sounds like a small, close-knit family to me. So, Anastasia, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your time and experience with the program. Really appreciate it.
Oh, you're very welcome. I really appreciate the opportunity as well, and I've had fun.
Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Don't be shy. We have a mailing list. Go to touchmba.com and get yourself signed up. And we'll keep you posted with the best tips and insider interviews on how to get into your #1 school. You can also find us on Twitter and Facebook at Touch MBA. See you soon.